Welcome to A Window on Fair Use. I'm Ellen Duranso, the Program Manager for Scholarly Publishing and Licensing in the MIT Libraries. This tutorial explains how to assess whether a proposed use of copyrighted content is likely to be a fair use, whether it would be legal without asking permission of the copyright holder. We'll be looking at fair use as a set of window panes through which we look at copyrighted content. To start, it's important to remember what copyright really is. It's a bundle of 5 rights that initially, in most cases, belong to the creator of the work. These include the right to reproduce or copy the work, the right to prepare derivative works like translations, the right to distribute the work, and the right to display or perform the work publicly. It is not necessary for the work to be labeled or registered in any particular way in order for the work to be copyrighted. Individuals other than the copyright holder don't have the right to distribute or make copies or new versions of a work without permission of the copyright holder. However, U.S. copyright law includes the concept of fair use. It's an exception that allows for certain uses without obtaining permission from the copyright holder. The law includes a 4-factor analysis to determine whether a proposed use would be a fair use. We'll look at each factor in turn. The first factor is the purpose, the proposed use of the material. Educational, nonprofit purposes weigh towards fair use, though not all educational use, even if proper credit is given, is fair. Transformative use, which adds new content, context, or meaning, weighs towards fair use. If the work is repurposed or recontextualized, courts have determined the use to be fair. The second factor is amount. How much of the work is being used in comparison to the whole? Using a smaller part of the work, parts that are not the heart of the work, and only the amount sufficient to your purpose, weigh toward fair use. The third factor is the nature of the work. If it is factual rather than creative, the use is more likely to be fair use. The fourth factor is effect on the market. If the proposed use would not have an effect on the market for the work, it is more likely to be fair use. The Supreme Court has said that market impact is the most important factor, but all 4 factors need to be weighed. There's no bright line rule that says how many factors have to be favorable in order for a use to be fair. Let's look at an example. I wanted to use a picture of window panes in this tutorial to help with a mnemonic to remember the 4 factors of fair use. Our first step is to determine if the work we want to use is under copyright. The window panes we've been looking at form part of the cover design for a recent book of poems that is copyrighted to a publisher, Codhill Press. We can assume the publisher owns copyright, or possibly the artist who made the cover image may own the copyright to that image, but in any case, our fair use analysis starts with the understanding that the design is definitely copyrighted. Let's look at the 4 factors in turn. The proposed purpose of the use is educational and not for profit. This weighs towards fair use. The use is transformative, since the work is significantly altered and placed in a very different context. This also weighs towards fair use. We have not used the entire work, only part of the cover image. This weighs towards fair use, though it could be argued that we took the heart of the image. The nature of the work is highly creative. It's artistic, which weighs against fair use. This use is very unlikely to have a negative effect on the market for the cover design of the book. The image has been shrunk and cropped and embedded in a tutorial. Even if this tutorial becomes viral and is shared widely via the web, it seems highly unlikely that any potential market for reuse of the window pane's image on the cover would be harmed by the existence of this altered version of the image within a tutorial, and I did not find any existing market licensing the image. So we have 3 factors that weigh towards fair use. I therefore decided I could use the image in a thumbnail size and in cropped versions in this educational and transformed context under fair use. How might this have been different if I'd chosen other images for my window panes? Let's look at another example. To make this collage of windows, I searched Flickr and Google. Some of these images come from .com sites, others are clearly marked for flexible reuse, and for others it's very unclear what the copyright holder's intent is. If the items were marked for flexible reuse, I don't need to make a fair use case. But is it fair use to use the images that are not clearly marked for reuse? Let's look at the 4 factors for this case, walking through our window panes of factors. The purpose of the use is educational, and it's also transformative, as I've made new work out of combination of other works. In terms of the amount, While I've taken the entire image in each case, I've used small thumbnails, which Google and Flickr themselves share in indexing these images. That kind of use of thumbnails has been supported by our courts. The nature of these works varies considerably, from highly artistic through mechanistic reproductions used to sell windows. The fair use case is stronger for the images that are mechanistic and unoriginal. Is there an effect on the market for any of these images? For those made available on commercial sites to sell windows, the market is presumably the windows themselves, not these photos, and an effect is unlikely. For the artistic images, again, I'm only using thumbnails that are available in results lists from search engines. I did not take any photos from sites that sell the images, for example, as parts of note cards or calendars or as framed artwork. And in addition, the works have been combined in a new form that minimizes the impact on the market for any one work. On balance, I conclude my use is fair use, and I've included this in my tutorial. If you would like support in walking through the 4 factors of fair use, you can go to the University of Minnesota's Fair Use Checklist, which is available through their libraries and helps you walk through an analysis of the 4 factors and determine whether your particular use is fair. Other universities have similar resources available. If you conclude from your fair use analysis that you don't have a convincing case for fair use, you have some options. First, you can seek content that is not restricted. For example, works prepared by employees of the U.S. government are in the public domain. They're not copyrighted. You can reuse them freely. U.S. works copyrighted prior to 1923 are also now in the public domain, and you can reuse them freely. You can also look for works whose copyright owners have flagged them for flexible reuse. For images, you can search via Google Images or Flickr for content that the copyright owner has made available for flexible reuse. For example, we can do a Google image search of window panes. Our result set, through advanced search, we can change to being labeled for reuse. And then our result set gives us those things that we can reuse flexibly. For example, we might find this image, silver lights behind window panes. If we look at the image on the Google website, we'll see that under additional information, it offers us the chance to click on some rights reserved. If we do so, we're going to be taken to a page that tells us how we can reuse this image. If we look at this information in more detail, we'll see that we're free to share, to remix this work, as long as we attribute it and use it for non-commercial purposes. We also need to distribute the resulting work under the same or a similar license. I'm fulfilling all of these requirements by making this video tutorial available under a CC license. If fair use does not apply, you can usually pay a fee to the rights holder in order to use material. For reuse of a portion of a book or article, an efficient place to begin is the Copyright Clearance Center, a commercial service. For reuse of content from formats other than a book or article, for example from music or film, a good place to start is the University of Texas's Need Permissions page. Here are the images I want to acknowledge having used here under fair use. This attribution is important for many reasons: to give proper credit, to avoid plagiarism, and to follow standard academic practice. But giving attribution or credit doesn't clear me of any possible copyright infringement claim. To avoid copyright infringement, I've relied on my fair use analysis, following the terms of the Creative Commons license for images where that was required by the copyright holder. Fair use can be complex because there are no clear rules and a fresh assessment must be made for each case. There is always ambiguity. But with this ambiguity comes flexibility, and this flexibility is the power of fair use. By taking advantage of fair use, we flex our fair use rights and continue to maintain them. If we don't, we risk that narrow interpretations will shrink what is understood to be the scope of fair use over time. So when we look at copyrighted works through the window panes of the 4 fair use factors, we can take advantage of our rights and help maintain a zone of reuse that is absolutely critical to education and research in universities.